If you've ever opened a dictionary, you've probably seen these strange backwards and upside down letters in the pronunciation guide, and most of us just breeze right past it because we don't understand the meaning of these symbols. But if you do that, you're missing out on some really valuable information. This writing system is called the International Phonetic Alphabet, or the IPA, and the ability to read the IPA is actually really useful for anyone who's interested in languages or linguistics. So this video is going to be a simple beginner's guide to all of the basics of everything you need to know about the IPA. And I'm going to break it down into 3 videos. The first one is just going to be the sounds of the symbols in the IPA. The second one is going to be all the detailed instructions about vowels and how we form vowels and how they fit into the IPA charts. And then the third one is going to be about consonants. So make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss out on those future videos. The English alphabet, like many other alphabets in other languages, is a really bad indicator of how words are pronounced. We know that B generally sounds like B and OO generally sounds like oo, but how does OUGH generally sound? It could be off like in cough, uff like in tough, O as in thorough, aw as in ought, or ow as in bow. And sometimes people will try to spell words out phonetically in order to give you an idea of how to pronounce it, but that can only go so far. For example, a few weeks ago I posted on Twitter, "How do you pronounce this word?" And if you didn't already know this, the word in question actually has a ton of different pronunciations depending on your region and your dialect. So I had a bunch of different people chiming in with spellings of how they pronounce that word. And that can give me a general idea of whether someone pronounces this word as 1 syllable or 2 syllables, but it also leaves a lot open to interpretation. Even in my own personal response to this question, I said that I pronounce it as cran, as in cranberry. But anyone reading this sentence wouldn't necessarily know how I pronounce the word cranberry. But the people who responded with the IPA left very little room open for interpretation. Now, the beauty of the IPA is that it gets as close as possible to having one symbol per sound in language. So if I see a symbol like this vowel symbol, and I see it in writing, I know that it's going to be pronounced something like this. Now, obviously, if you look at these 2 charts, there is a lot more symbols in this than we have letters in our alphabet. And that's because the International Phonetic Alphabet has to account for all sounds that are attested in all languages, not just English. And they have some sounds that are very familiar to us, like, say, this. E. And then they have some that are very strange to us, like this. So what I want to do now is just go through some of the most familiar sounds to the majority of English speakers, and we'll go over those sounds, and then in the future videos, we might cover some of the slightly more foreign sounds to us. By the way, everything you see here is from IPAchart.com, which is a really nice website because it's interactive. You get to look at all the different IPA symbols and click on them to hear the sounds, and it's just really nice. Now, this sort of asymmetrical quadrilateral is a map of all the different types of vowel sounds that languages can make. Now, a quick help for many of these vowel sounds is that the lowercase symbols, like this one or that one, are generally pronounced the same as they would be in Spanish and I think possibly Italian and Portuguese. So hopefully that's helpful to some of you. But for example, the letter U in Spanish is not pronounced U, but just U. And that's how the sound is in the IPA. Okay, be careful not to pronounce this as U, as in cute or unique. It's just a flat, straight oo sound. Oo, as in boot. Over here you have E as in beat. This uppercase I is the I as in bit. Then this sort of curvy U over here is like the in book. Now, I'm going pretty quickly here, but I am going to do a review section at the end of this video and give you some exercises to practice. But you still might need to rewatch this portion of the video a few times, or just slow it down, pause, read the example words, and give it a little bit of extra time. This lowercase e over here, I've already mentioned, is similar to the E sound in Spanish, and it's more or less similar to the A sound in English, as in bait. It's not precisely the same. We will actually go over a little bit more about this E sound in our vowels video, but for right now, it's similar-ish to the A sound in English. And the letter O is similar to the O sound, as in boat. Now, this upside down E here is an extremely common vowel in English, and we call it a schwa. And it's basically similar to the A sound in the word about. If you notice, we don't actually say about, about. If we're speaking normal casual English, we say about. And in the IPA, we would spell that sound with this symbol. And in English, this sound is almost always going to be in the unstressed syllables of a word. This sort of backwards 3 here is as in bet, and this upside down V is as in but. This open O, or it looks like a backwards C, is pronounced aw, as in bought. This A and E over here we call that the ash sign, and it's pronounced like as in bat. And then this letter A down here is pronounced like ah. And I'm from Wisconsin, so my pronunciation might be a little bit different from yours, but that's as in bot, like robot. And you might pronounce it something a little bit closer to this, or maybe something like this, but generally speaking, I think this one is the closest to robot, at least for my accent. So those are the main vowels I want to focus on. Like I said, I skipped over a bunch of them. I do plan on coming back and talking more about them in future videos. And then moving on to the consonant sounds in the IPA, you should look at this chart and be able to recognize quite a few of these letters. Some of them are going to be very strange looking, like some are from Greek, and then others have like strange little tails and modifications to them. Fortunately, a quick rule of thumb is that in the consonants of the IPA chart, generally speaking, the lowercase consonants are going to be relatively similar to their pronunciations in English. Not all of them, but that's a pretty good rule of thumb. For example, the lowercase p, b, t, d, k, and g are all fairly similar to their English equivalent. The letter P here is very similar to the English P in the word Spock. And if you actually notice, the P in the word Spock is actually slightly different than the P in the word pocket. Okay, there's a very slight difference there. We'll get more into that in my consonant video later. But for now, just recognize that this lowercase p is very similar to the English P, at least as far as words like Spock, spool, spa, spring. And then obviously B as in ball, boy, whatever. T as in stick, D as in dog. K sound represents basically anything that sounds like a K in English, right? So the normal K, like in skill or skittles, and then obviously it also sounds like the C in English a lot of times, so that would be like scram or screen. And then sometimes other letters like school, right? SCH. And then obviously the G is very similar to English, like the word goat or god. And N are basically exactly the same as they are in the English alphabet, as well as F, V, S, Z. Okay, none of these should be any surprise to you there. And then the other consonants that are similar to the English language are the H sound, ha, ha. And well, that one's hard to do without adding a vowel in, but you get what I'm saying. Ha. It's just like a breath. And then the letter L is basically similar to the way that you would naturally pronounce the letter L. Now, this lowercase r here is actually the way you would expect to pronounce an R in Spanish, or maybe like the double R in Spanish. So listen to this.
Ra, arra.
All right, this sort of modified R here is also in Spanish, and that is also similar to the T sound in the word water or hippopotamus. All right, and then these capital R's over here, the right side up R and lowercase r, have been attested in the French language. Okay, so this upside down R is like the R in the Parisian dialect of French, Paris. Right? And then this right side up R is a trill, and that is how Edith Piaf very famously pronounces her R's in the song Non, je ne regrette rien. I can't really do it, but you get the picture. It's something like that. If you're looking for the IPA symbol of how we pronounce R's in English, it would be this upside down lowercase r over here.
Ra. Ara.
All right. On occasion, I see people spell it with this right side up R here, and I think that's kind of a convention sometimes, but I prefer to stick with the traditional upside down R. All right, now another letter you have to be really careful about is the lowercase letter J, because it does not sound like J, like you might expect it to if you're an English speaker. It actually sounds like the Y in yes. And that's actually the same sound that it would make in German or Esperanto and a lot of other Northern European languages. But we actually do have some hints of this in English. Like, for example, in the word hallelujah, the letter J makes the Y sound, just like the IPA symbol does. All right, now we have to start getting into some of the consonant sounds that you might not recognize. All right, so this theta and this letter thorn over here, these letters are basically your TH in English, and one is voiceless, the other is voiced. So that would be the TH as in think or thin, and this would be the voiced TH sound as in this or that. All right, and then there's also this sort of strange looking N with the little tail underneath, and that sound is and you might be thinking that this isn't even a sound in English, but this is definitely a phoneme in English. I promise you, you say this sound every single day. And typically, with the English alphabet, we spell this as NG. So words like king or song. And don't be deceived. Just because we usually spell it with two letters does not mean that this is two separate sounds, okay? You do not say king or song. The sound is not an N followed by a G. It's neither of them. It's its own sound, and so it gets its own symbol in the IPA. And then this sort of stretched out S-looking thing here is what you might think of as an SH sound, as in share or sheep, but it also exists in words like ambition. And then this sort of three-looking thing here is the zh sound. So that's it's the J sound in French, but it also exists in English in words like Asia or treasure. And then the last one that's important to point out is this question mark looking thing over here, and that is what we call a glottal stop. And this one might be hard to understand or hard to kind of conceptualize how this is even a consonant, because this consonant might sound sort of just like not saying anything, because you just stop your vocal cords from vibrating. But this is the sound, the typical explanation of this sound is that it's the space in between the vowels in the word uh-oh. All right, when I say uh-oh, that's just two different vowels. But when I say uh-oh, that's two vowels separated by a consonant or a glottal stop. Or if you can imagine Audrey Hepburn from My Fair Lady saying the name Harry Potter, well, towards the end of the movie, she might say Harry Potter, but when her Cockney accent comes out, it would sound something much more like Harry Potter. And in those cases, this glottal stop kind of stands in other places where others of us might expect a T sound or possibly this flapped R sound to come in. Now, if you're just interested in getting all the information about the IPA, then you can continue on to the next video in this series, which I will link to up here, and I'll also put the link down in the description below. But for those of you who are interested in getting a little bit more practice using the IPA symbols we just learned, here are some exercises. All right, so here is the first exercise. It should be pretty easy to figure out how this word is pronounced. The only symbol that you might need a little bit of help with is this upside down R, but if you have to, just go back and watch that part of the video. So I'm just going to give you the answer here, so pause if you need a little bit more time. But the pronunciation written out here is scar, or if you are a Disney villain, then you might pronounce it as ska, because of course Disney villains always have British accents. This little colon here, these two dots, all that does is it just represents that this A sound is just going to get held out a little bit longer. So that's a long vowel. Anyways, moving on to the next exercise. How would you transcribe the word Africa using the IPA? Obviously, you might pronounce Africa different than I do, and that's fine. But I'm going to give you the answer for how I pronounce this word. So if you have a pen and paper handy, go ahead and write out how you think I pronounce the word Africa. All right, and one thing to pay really close attention to is how I pronounce these A vowels, and possibly the I vowel as well. That's Africa. All right, and if you need more time, pause the video because the answer is like this. And notice that I pronounce the last A in Africa closer to the pronunciation of the I. The next exercise is Hakuna Matata, and just pay attention to the different ways that the A vowel in English might be pronounced. And so go ahead and pause the video if you need more time, and the answer is this, Hakuna Matata. Obviously, the middle syllable in each word is the stressed part, Hakuna Matata. And all of the vowels in unstressed syllables are actually schwas. Like I said, this is a very common sound in English, especially in unstressed syllables. If you wanted to get a little bit more detailed, you could transcribe it like this. And notice that I've used some brackets here to show that I'm giving a more detailed allophonic transcription. So I'm actually showing the allophones of some of these phonemes. If you don't understand what that means, I would highly recommend checking out my phonology video, and I will explain the difference between allophones and phonemes and why you use brackets or slashes sometimes. And the big interesting thing here is that I used the flap for the T sound in Hakuna Matata because we don't actually say Hakuna Matata in American English. We say Hakuna Matata. Also, I turned my regular T and K into the aspirated version of these sounds. More on that in my consonants video. And here is the next exercise. So go ahead and try to read through this transcription and see if you can figure out what it means. The only symbol in here that you might not recognize is this upside down A, and that sounds like this. Go ahead and pause the video if you're not done trying to figure it out, but the pronunciation is something like, as far as brains go, I got the lion's share. Okay, and obviously this is a direct quote from The Lion King by a character with a British accent. If it had been a character with an American accent, he might say something like, as far as brains go, I got the lion's share. And then the last one, go ahead and do your best to try to read through this exercise. And then one more thing that will be covered in the consonant episode of this series is when you have the T and the sh sounds together, they actually form what's called an affricate. And if you say these really closely together and kind of run them together, it instead of sounding like t-sh, it sounds like ch. So you might think of that as being sort of the CH sound in English. And if you need more time, pause the video because the answer is everything the light touches is our kingdom. Now, there's a lot more to understanding the IPA than just memorizing the sounds of all the symbols, so I highly recommend you check out the next video in this series where I'll explain all the details about how vowels work in the IPA. And if you're interested, you can check out my Linguistics 101 video series on phonetics and phonology, which will give you a much deeper understanding of these concepts.